We're talking to innovators. We're talking to young people that are building things. All right, now we're going to look at Canada now. Number of black-owned businesses in Canada, of course, increasing according to stats from, I think, Statistics Canada. Let's take a look at some of those numbers. As far as the statistics around the metrics for black-owned businesses, majority of them are owned by men. Do we have those numbers? Yes, we do. 66,880, 22.1% of all firms. So a pretty small number. 70.4% of these businesses owned by men, 29.6% owned by women. 61.4% are owned by immigrants. Now, we do a further breakdown as far as the nations, the source nations for, of course, where most of these black businesses are owned. No surprise, Nigeria coming out tops, 14.2%. Jamaica in second place, 12.1%. Ethiopia in third place, 10.5%. Haiti, 10.2%. Somalia, 4.7%. This is data coming from Statistics Canada. Now, the issue is financial inclusion. The issue is whether or not the owners of these black businesses are able to get bank accounts and able to service their customers. So this gentleman, Kingsley Madu, he's a founder and CEO of Expedier Incorporated, and that is exactly what they do. I believe this is the first black-owned bank in Canada. He joins us from Kitchener. Kingsley, good morning to you. Thanks also we're keeping Nigerians waking up very early in Seattle and also in Canada as well. So look, why do you think the minority or immigrant population in Canada is underserved when it comes to financial services, and how did that prompt you to build your platform?
Well, good morning so much. Good morning, Rotus. Thank you for having me this morning. It's a pleasure being here. So I'm going to answer that question by telling you my own experience, right? My own experience. So when I immigrated a few years back, right out from the airport, I knew something was wrong because I couldn't get a e-taxi, right, to take me from the airport to the hotel that I'd booked. And the simple reason was because all of the apps suddenly said you need some kind of card. It's called a credit for it to work, right? And I didn't have that, but somehow I managed to get out of the airport and get to the hotel where I was going to stay. And then the hotel says to me, oh, we cannot honor your reservation for the same reason you do not have a credit card on file. So, but luckily I could pay with cash. So I paid my way through cash. And then I wanted to go rent a car. And I was told the same thing. You cannot rent a car because you do not have a credit card. But then it became very interesting shortly. I went to rent a house and the landlord says to me, you do not have credit history. I need 6 months of credit history before I can rent you my house. At that point, I'm frustrated. What is all of this about credit history, credit cards, and all of that? And then I asked the landlord, where do I get credit? Like the naive new immigrant, right? And then she says to me, it starts from the bank. And so I walked down to the closest bank and I say, I need credit. And the nice lady out there said to me, well, it starts with opening a bank account. I'm like, okay, let's open one. And then they asked me, do you have a home address? And I said, no, I just arrived. I don't have a home address. And they said, well, we need an address on file. And so since you don't have a home address, we cannot open a bank account for you. So here I am, completely stranded. I don't have credit history that I can bring on. I cannot rent a house because I don't have that. At the same time, I cannot get a banking account because I don't have a house. Like something is wrong, right? And that was when it dawned on me that this is actually a very big, big issue. A little bit of research into it, and I realized that it wasn't just me. It wasn't just unique to me. It's just the way the banking system was originally set up, right? But now there are more and more of us immigrants who are influxing. And so it becomes a thing to say, okay, how do we address this, right? What kind of banking solution are we going to put in place? Are we going to build to help immigrants and in particular their businesses? Because if I as an individual are struggling to get into the banking landscape, what about the business side of things, right? And so it transcends just the retail. It also goes to the SMEs, right? SMBs. And so that was what led us to building Expedia and saying, let's build that solution. Let's find that answer to this problem and help those 66,000 immigrants, right, who own businesses, those 66,000 Black-owned entrepreneurs, Black-owned SMBs to say, come, let's make it a whole lot easier for you to bank so that you can thrive in your new location.
Great story. This is stories like this that inspire innovation and cause people to solve for problems that are relevant to society. So great stuff. But I got to ask you, we're looking at your Expedia focus areas, right? I think about 4 or 5 or 6 of them. Is there a high level of risk for you stepping in to provide these financial services to these underserved groups, like the Black and Indigenous people of color? So talk about the risk level. If you are the risk that you're assuming because of risk of default, for instance, and so on and so forth.
Oh yes, there's quite a whole lot of risk out there, right? Inherent in any startup and all of that, there are inherent risks in all of that. But I think of it more as on the flip side is actually the bigger risk of not even attempting in the first place, right? Of not even solving these problems in the first place, and therein we have even the bigger risk, right? Of course, you've got the risk of inclusion, of trying to build something that is inclusive and people accepting that, right? Again, it has to do with money and building trust and all of that, right? Within an ecosystem, especially when your focus is laser in that sense, addressing the BIPOC population, right? And so, but again, as I said before, the bigger risks to me and to my team is the risk of not even attempting, the risk of not building this, because what would happen is the BIPOC, right, the underserved will continue to be underserved, and therein lies the bigger risk. In fact, I'm glad that you referenced some statistics. Let me also pull up the statistics as well, right? In the next 10 to 15 years, right, from the same source that you pulled, 1 in every 3 Canadian will be a newly landed immigrant.
Wow.
In the next 10 to 15 years will be a newly landed immigrant. Yes, it's growing that large, right? And so now is the right time to begin to look at this and say it is time to solve it. It is time to fix it. And so the bigger risk lies in not addressing this situation right now.
Oh, great stuff. I have to ask you about infrastructure because our last guest, he's business focused in Nigeria. You're in Canada. Internet penetration, so broadband penetration in Nigeria is 48%. Internet penetration in Canada is 93%. So this is using data from the World Bank. How has that helped your cause in terms of scaling what you're trying to do using this digital bank that you've built? The infrastructure, the importance of infrastructure.
Right. Oh yes, that has made it a whole lot easier to build and to scale at large, right? Because here the infrastructure exists, right? As you mentioned, the digital penetration is higher. And so it's essentially leveraging that, right? And building off of that already. And so we are already positioned and doing that already, making it a whole lot easier for people to just, it's as easy as getting online, getting either on the web app or on the mobile device, right? Downloading it and just using it. It's that simple. And that's one of the reasons why we decided to adopt the digital banking approach versus the brick and mortar, right? Because things are a whole lot more digitized in that sense. And so the infrastructure is an enabler with helping us build out and scale at large the offerings that we have. It's a whole lot easier to think that irrespective of your location, your money could actually be in the palm of your hands simply by having an app like Expedia.
You've been noticed by Google. I think you're in their starter program. Help me out with the title again, that assists startups. What kind of reward? Say it again?
Yeah. Google for Black startups.
Google for Black startups. Thank you. So what kind of rewards does that bring? Is it more exposure for you that one of the biggest tech companies in the world has noticed you and is saying, okay, we're going to back these guys?
I'm sure you can see the smile on my face.
Of course.
So what has happened is that the last few years, we've been building in stealth, right? We've been building in stealth and just slowly building out and making sure that what we build is out there and all of that. And then from nowhere, Google comes and says, hey, we've noticed you. What's going on and all of that. I say, you know what? Let's work this out together. And that essentially took us from zero to hero status levels, right? The awareness that it created overnight, in fact, it gave us instant validation overnight, right? And so no one's going to be saying, oh, this brand, who knows them, where do they, and all of that. That has been addressed. So it's giving us global awareness in that sense, from just being a small local entity to being out there in the whole world, right? Which is something that is really revolutionizing the way we're now working. Added to that, it's that it gives us access to a whole lot of a great number of suite of Google technology, right? That will even further enhance us and help us as we not only build but also to scale at large, right? And Google is graciously throwing that in as credits to us to say, keep building, we're here for you. But then there's another third level, which is also that Google is granting us access to industry experts from within their own ecosystem, right? People who will say, you know what, I'm working with you, let's do this together, hand-holding, step by step. But then, of course, there's also the financial reward part, which I'm not able to speak to right now. But then, again, it's just huge. It's just huge for us. It's really brought us forth in the limelight and given us the validation that we need.
Look, it's just a great story. Young guy, you go to an environment where you've got 93% internet penetration. The infrastructure is there. You're able to start a business. You have, the government is providing an enabling environment. Your ideas are flourishing. Google has noticed you, and it's just I want to take this conversation in another direction, but I don't want to do that. So let's just let me ask you about AI. My final question. You know where I'm going. My final question is artificial intelligence. Kingsley, are you incorporating that? What's your view on AI? How are you looking at that?
Whereas I'm not an expert on AI, but I think AI is here to stay. AI will revolutionize the next few years and how we work, right? And so for us, right from the start, we began with AI, right? So we've got AI plugged into what we're doing already and how we're building. So one of the areas that we utilize AI is the area of transaction monitoring, right? Which essentially is another way of saying we're ensuring everyone's money is safe, right? So we've got an AI engine behind the scenes watching through, right? It's got its own rules and regulations and just making sure that everybody is safe and things are happening fine. So that is the first level that we have incorporated AI into Expedier. Of course, there are other levels that we are looking into, especially leveraging Google Bard, right? So we're going to be using that extensively, right, to help us as we build and scale. So that, for example, a user needs help, right? They don't necessarily need to dial in or email. They could just go on the app and AI will be helping them out, right, resolving their issues, in real time. So yes, AI is here to stay, in my views, and we're one of the early people to start leveraging what it's got to offer as we build out an Expedier.
Kingsley Madu, this is it's a great story. It's always great talking to Nigerians that are just being innovative and creating new things and making the news. So we appreciate your time. Thank you so much for getting up super early to talk to us, and I appreciate you. Well done. Good luck.